The hunt begins. The forest was silent, too silent. Ethan crouched low, his rifle steady in his hands. His breathing was slow and controlled. Every hunter knew that when the forest went quiet, something dangerous was near. He scanned the trees, his sharp eyes watching for movement. He was deep in the wilderness, miles away from civilization. This was his territory. For years, he had hunted here, tracking deer, wolves, and even the occasional bear. But tonight, something felt different. A strange clicking sound echoed through the trees. It was unlike anything he had ever heard before. It wasn't an animal sound. It was calculated, deliberate, intelligent. Ethan's grip tightened on his rifle. His instincts screamed at him, he was being watched. Then, without warning, something huge and fast burst from the trees. It moved like a blur, faster than any predator on Earth. Ethan barely had time to react. The massive beast lunged at him, its claws slashing through the air. He threw himself to the side, rolling onto the ground just as the creature's claws tore through the dirt where he had been standing. Ethan sprang to his feet, heart pounding. The beast was unlike anything he had ever seen, 9 feet tall, muscular, covered in dark armored skin. Its glowing red eyes locked onto him, filled with hunger. He raised his rifle and fired. Bang! 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 The bullet slammed into the creature's chest, but it barely flinched. Ethan's mind raced. What the hell was this thing? The beast roared and charged again. He had no time to think. He dove behind a fallen tree, reloading his rifle in seconds. The creature sniffed the air, searching for him. Then Ethan noticed something strange. It wasn't hunting randomly. It was testing him. Every move he made, the beast adjusted. It was studying his tactics, learning his behavior. Ethan narrowed his eyes. If this thing was smart, he had to be smarter. He reached into his belt and grabbed a hunting knife. He took a deep breath and waited. The beast sniffed again, its claws scraping against the bark of the tree. Then Ethan moved. In a flash, he rolled out, throwing his knife with perfect precision. The blade sank into the creature's throat. The beast stumbled, choking on its own blood. It roared in rage, but Ethan didn't give it a chance. He leaped forward, grabbed his rifle, and aimed for the head. One shot. The beast collapsed. Ethan exhaled, stepping back. His body was shaking. He had fought bears before, but nothing like this. He turned to leave, then he felt it, a presence. Someone or something was standing behind him. Slowly, he turned around. A figure stepped out of the shadows. She was tall, powerful, and unlike any human he had ever seen. Her body was covered in sleek black armor, her skin a shade of deep violet. Her golden eyes glowed softly in the dark. She held no weapon. She didn't need one. She had been watching him. Impressive, she said, her voice smooth but firm. You hunt like one of us. Ethan's grip tightened on his rifle. Who the hell are you? The alien warrior smiled. I am Zaryth, a huntress of the Exetar. And you, human, have just proven yourself worthy. The alien hunter's offer. The night was heavy with silence. The only sound was Ethan's heartbeat, a steady, controlled rhythm. Though his instincts screamed at him to react, Zaryth stood before him, a warrior from the stars. Her golden eyes watched him with something close to admiration. She had not attacked. She had not threatened him. She had evaluated him. Ethan lowered his rifle but did not put it away. He had seen enough in his life to know that predators came in all forms, even those who spoke with honeyed words. What do you mean, worthy? Ethan asked, his voice calm though his muscles were still tense, ready to react at a moment's notice. Zaryth tilted her head slightly, as if considering his question. Then she took a step forward, unbothered by his weapon, unafraid of him. "You are not like the others of your kind," she said, her voice smooth, almost curious. "You do not panic. You do not flee. You think. You adapt. You survive." Her armored fingers brushed against the dead beast at their feet. "Even this one felt your instincts. Your kind should not have been able to kill such prey." Ethan's grip on his rifle tightened. "My kind?" Zara looked at him for a long moment, then sighed, as if realizing she would have to explain something that should have been obvious. "Your species is young, primitive. Most humans are weak, soft. They rely on tools, on numbers, on walls to keep danger out. But you," her glowing eyes locked onto his, "you are different." Ethan smirked slightly. "So what? You came all this way to give me a compliment?" Zara's lips curled into something like amusement. "No. I came to give you an offer." She reached to her belt and pressed a small device. A bright blue holographic projection flickered to life in the air between them. Ethan's eyes narrowed. It was a hunting tournament. Not on Earth. Not against animals. Against warriors. Against killers. And Zara was inviting him. Ethan exhaled slowly. This wasn't just a test. It was a challenge. His instincts, the same ones that had saved his life countless times, whispered a warning. "This is bigger than you think. This is not just about the hunt." Zara's expression became serious. "I seek the strongest mate. Our laws demand it. It is why I came to your world, to observe, to test." Her golden eyes gleamed with something Ethan couldn't quite place. "You have passed. Now you must decide." She took a step closer, standing just inches away from him. "Will you prove yourself, or will you run like the rest of your kind?" The air between them was electric. Ethan didn't blink. Then, after a long moment, he grinned. "When do we start?" "The deadliest prey." Ethan didn't know what was worse, the silence or the feeling of being watched. The alien jungle stretched endlessly before him, its massive trees twisting into the sky like bones of forgotten beasts. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of something primal, something that whispered danger in every breath. He hated that he couldn't recognize the sounds around him. No rustling of deer, no distant howl of wolves. Only shadows shifting. Only unseen eyes watching. Somewhere behind him, Zara moved without a sound. If he hadn't seen her land with him on this planet, he would have thought she vanished. She was testing him again. Ethan exhaled slowly, lowering himself into a crouch, scanning the brush. This wasn't just a hunt. It was a trap. And if there was one thing he had learned from years of hunting in the wild, it was this: a hunter who doesn't realize his prey is already dead. 5 hours earlier, the moment Ethan had agreed, Zara wasted no time. He had expected some long speech, maybe a ritual before the tournament began. Instead, she led him onto a sleek alien vessel, dropped him into a death world, and simply said, "Survive." Then she was gone. And now here he was, in a jungle not meant for humans. His rifle was strapped to his back. His knife rested at his side. But even with his weapons, he could feel it, he was at a disadvantage. This world didn't belong to him, but he would make it his. Present time, a growl. Ethan froze. It was close. Slowly, he turned his head, eyes searching the thick undergrowth. The noise came from his left. Then movement, but not from where he expected. The attack came from above. A massive four-legged creature launched from the trees, moving too fast for something so big. Its elongated jaws snapped shut just inches from his throat. Ethan rolled hard. The beast's claws tore through the ground where he had been. It landed, crouching low, its amber eyes locked onto him. Ethan recognized the hunting stance. It wasn't trying to scare him. It was planning to kill. His instincts took over. Don't run. Running triggers pursuit. Instead, he moved sideways, slowly, making himself less of a direct target. The creature's nostrils flared. It had expected him to panic. It expected him to react like prey. Ethan didn't. A slow, low grin crept across his face. You're not the first predator I've met. The creature lunged again. Ethan sidestepped, twisting at the last moment, his knife flashing. The blade sank deep into the beast's exposed neck. The creature howled, thrashing wildly, but Ethan didn't hesitate. He wrenched the knife free and struck again, one clean, brutal motion. The beast collapsed, dead. Ethan stepped back, heart pounding, breath steady. And then, clapping. He turned. Zaryth stood on a rock above him, watching, her golden eyes gleaming. Fascinating. Ethan wiped the blood from his knife. You knew that thing was going to attack me. Zaryth tilted her head. Of course. I needed to see how you would respond. Ethan narrowed his eyes. This isn't just a tournament, is it? Zaryth smirked. No. Then her gaze flicked behind him. Ethan didn't need to ask why. The jungle was waking up. More growls. More shifting in the trees. The first predator had simply been a test. Now the real hunt began. A warrior's respect. The jungle was no longer just watching. It was moving. Ethan could feel it in the ground beneath him, the shift in the earth, the vibration of something massive approaching. He wiped the blood off his knife and locked eyes with Zaryth, who was still perched on the rock, watching with an almost amused expression. So, are you going to help, or is this another test? He asked. She tilted her head. Does it matter? Ethan gritted his teeth. He didn't have time for games. The first beast had been bad. The ones coming now. Much worse. A deep, rumbling snarl echoed through the trees. Then another. And another. Zaryth finally moved, stepping down from the rock, her golden eyes scanning the darkness. 3, she said simply. No, 4. Ethan flicked the safety off his rifle. So we fight? She smiled. Now you understand. Then the jungle exploded. A hunter and a huntress. The first beast struck fast, launching from the underbrush with terrifying speed. Ethan fired, 3 shots to the chest. The creature staggered but didn't go down. It was bigger than the first, more armored, more resistant. Zaryth, meanwhile, had already moved. She was faster than anything he had ever seen. Her body blurred as she leaped, twin blades flashing in her hands. One clean strike straight to the beast's throat. The creature howled and collapsed. Ethan barely had time to register it before the second one came. This one was his. It lunged. He dodged, barely. Its claws raked across his shoulder, but he twisted, using the momentum to drive his knife deep into its ribs. It roared in pain. Ethan twisted the blade hard. The beast collapsed at his feet. The jungle went silent again. Zaryth stepped toward him, wiping the blood off her blades. She studied him, not just as an observer this time, but as a warrior evaluating an equal. You are not like the others, she murmured. Humans are supposed to be weak, fragile, dependent. Ethan exhaled, rolling his shoulder where the beast had grazed him. Guess I didn't get the memo. She smiled, not mockingly this time, but with something else, respect. She stepped closer. You think like a Exitar. You fight like one. And yet, you are human. Ethan gave her a look. You keep saying that like it's supposed to mean something. Her expression darkened slightly. Because it does. She turned her gaze back to the jungle, scanning the darkness. There is something you do not yet understand, Ethan Drake. This hunt, this test, it is not just about proving your strength. Ethan frowned. Then what is it about? Zaryth hesitated. Then, for the first time since he met her, her voice carried something unexpected, doubt. You will find out soon enough. Ethan didn't like the sound of that. The jungle was silent again, but this time it didn't feel like peace. It felt like the calm before the real storm. The Exeter challenge. The jungle was dead. Not in the way forests fall silent before a predator moves. This was something deeper, something wrong. Ethan's breath was steady, but his instinct screamed. Zaryth stood beside him, her golden eyes narrowed, body still, listening to something he couldn't hear. Then, a hum. Not a growl. Not an animal sound. Technology. Ethan turned just as the darkness came alive. Figures emerged from the shadows, stepping forward like ghosts. They weren't beasts. They were Exeter. Armored. Armed. Watching. And suddenly, Ethan understood. This wasn't a hunt. It was an ambush. The real test. Ethan's grip tightened on his rifle as 4 towering Exeter warriors stepped into view. Unlike Zaryth, these ones didn't have curiosity in their eyes. They had judgment. One of them, larger than the rest, stepped forward. His voice was cold, sharp as a blade. Zaryth, you bring an outsider to our world. Zaryth didn't flinch. I bring a warrior. The leader's eyes flicked to Ethan. He didn't speak for a moment, just measured him. Then he smiled. He is small. Ethan smirked. I get that a lot. The warriors chuckled, but the leader didn't. You claim he is worthy, he said to Zaryth, but words mean nothing. He turned back to Ethan, his gaze like a weight pressing down. Prove it. Ethan rolled his shoulders, feeling the dull ache from his last fight. How? The leader unsheathed a massive blade. By surviving. Ethan exhaled. Of course. 3 against 1. The Exeter warriors spread out. Ethan counted 3. He glanced at Zaryth. You jumping in on this? She crossed her arms. You must do this alone. Of course. Ethan took a slow breath. He didn't have their size, their strength. But he had something else. Speed. Intelligence. Instinct. The first warrior moved, a blur of muscle and armor. Ethan dodged, barely avoiding the swing of a massive blade. Too close. Too slow. The second warrior lunged. Ethan dropped low, rolled, grabbed a fistful of dirt, and threw it into the warrior's eyes. A growl of rage, but Ethan was already moving. The third warrior was fast, but Ethan was faster. He ducked under the strike, slipped behind him, and drove his knife into the exposed joint of his armor. 1 down. The leader's expression didn't change. The other 2 adjusted. They weren't just swinging blindly now. They were learning. Ethan clenched his jaw. This was not a fight he could win with brute strength. He needed to think. Then he saw it, a split-second hesitation in the second warrior's stance. An opening. Ethan moved fast. He kicked the fallen warrior's blade into his hands, twisted, and threw it. The weapon slammed into the second warrior's chest. 2 down. The leader was no longer smiling. Ethan turned to face him. The last one. The biggest one. The real challenge. The leader stepped forward, gripping his massive blade. No tricks. No games. A final, pure fight. Ethan exhaled. His heart was steady. His mind was clear. And then they charged. The apex fighter. The world narrowed to one moment, one fight. Ethan stood across from the Exeter leader, a towering warrior of muscle and precision. The jungle seemed to fade away, the watching eyes of the other warriors nothing more than shadows at the edge of his vision. This wasn't just a fight. This was the moment that decided everything. The Exitar leader gripped his massive blade, its curved edge humming with energy, a weapon meant to tear through creatures 10 times Ethan's size. Ethan had a knife and his instincts. The leader didn't waste time. He moved first, fast, too fast. The blade sliced through the air, missing Ethan by inches as he twisted away. One mistake, one wrong move, he'd be dead. The leader came again, relentless. Every strike calculated, every attack pressing Ethan back. This was not brute force. This was experience. And Ethan knew it, if he played defense, he would lose. A moment of instinct. Ethan waited, let the leader think he was on the defensive. Then, a slight hesitation in the warrior's movement. Ethan moved, not back, not away, forward. He ducked low, sliding beneath a wild swing, and slammed his knife into the warrior's side, between the armor plates. The leader grunted in pain, but he didn't go down. Instead, he grabbed Ethan by the throat. Ethan gasped as he was lifted off the ground, the Exitar's grip like steel. He had to think fast. His free hand found the warrior's wrist. Then he drove his knee into the joint. Once. Twice. Harder. The leader's grip loosened. Ethan wrenched free, hitting the ground, rolling to the side just as the energy blade sliced down where his head had been. No hesitation. He sprang up, knife flashing. One clean strike straight to the throat. The warrior froze. For a long second, everything was still. Then the Exitar leader stumbled back, gripping his wound. His golden eyes locked onto Ethan. Then he laughed. The turning point. The Exitar warriors did not rush forward. They did not retaliate. Instead, the leader raised a hand, and every warrior fell to one knee. Ethan's breath was steady, his mind sharp, but his body ached. Zaryth stepped forward, her expression unreadable. The leader's voice was rough but steady. You have done what no human has ever done. Ethan wiped blood from his knife. Survive? The leader smiled. No. Prove yourself. He gestured to the warriors kneeling. You are not prey. You are not weak. You are worthy of respect. Ethan glanced at Zaryth, but she was already watching him. There was something else in her gaze now. Something new. Something deeper. She stepped closer. Ethan Drake, you are no longer an outsider. The words held weight, power, meaning. But Ethan knew this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. A hunter's legacy. The jungle air was thick with tension. Ethan stood in the circle of Exitar warriors, their golden eyes locked onto him, not with hostility, not with suspicion, but with respect. He had fought. He had survived. He had proven himself. The Exitar leader, still holding his wound, stepped forward. Blood dripped onto the earth, but his voice was steady. Ethan Drake, you have earned the right to stand among us. Silence. Then, as if answering an unspoken command, every warrior around Ethan slammed a fist against their chest, a sharp, synchronized motion. A salute. Zaryth stepped closer. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes burned with something new. The final choice. Ethan exhaled. He should have felt relief. Instead, he felt something else. Restless. Unfinished. Zaryth studied him. You have a choice now, human. Ethan smirked. Another test. Her lips curved slightly. No. An invitation. She gestured to the warriors. You have earned a place here. You could leave your world behind, fight in battles beyond your imagination, hunt creatures no human has ever faced. She stepped even closer, her voice softer now. Or you could return to your world and be forgotten. The words hung between them. Ethan's fingers curled. The jungle, the adrenaline, the fight, it had awakened something in him. Something primal. Something undeniable. But Earth was still his home. Could he really leave it behind? He glanced at the warriors, at Zaryth, at the endless jungle stretching beyond them. Then he made his decision. The hunter's answer. Ethan let out a slow breath. I won't stay. A flicker of something crossed Zaryth's face, too quick to read, but she nodded. No argument. No disappointment. Just understanding. The Exitar leader, however, took a step forward. Then take this, human. He held out a blade, not the crude, jagged ones of the jungle beasts. This was a warrior's weapon. Ethan took it, feeling the weight of the cold steel in his hand. Not just a gift. A mark. A legacy. Zaryth spoke again. You will always be remembered among my people as the human who proved himself a true hunter. Ethan turned the blade in his grip. Then he smirked. If you ever need a hunt partner, you know where to find me. Zaryth's golden eyes gleamed. I will. As Ethan walked toward the waiting transport, toward the world he had left behind, he knew one thing for sure, this wasn't the last time he would see them. And when the next hunt came, he would be ready.